Honored to be here. So my name's Steve Everline. I run a company called Tipping Point Resilience with my wife. And this company and this presentation will focus on exactly two things. We focus on the nuts and bolts things you as a citizen need to do to get ready for a 9-point magnitude earthquake tsunami event. That's one thing, and that seems like plenty big, right? But we're also going to talk about a second thing, which is earthquake preparedness culture. The cultural part of preparedness is the part that's oftentimes missing in the Pacific Northwest. The cultural part explains why you, as someone who's known for the last 15 years that we are in a tsunami or earthquake zone, haven't done as much as you know that you should, right? It's a cultural phenomenon and one that we want to start to change tonight. And I'm going to show you how as we go through. But first, I'm going to tell you a story of why I'm on this stage today. The reason I'm on this stage today is because in 2002, I fell in love with a girl. And I followed that girl to the other side of the world, to the historically rich, geographically rugged, incredibly crowded country of Sri Lanka. And you all know Sri Lanka. It's that little teeny teardrop of a country right below India. It's got about 2.5 billion next door neighbors in the form of China and India. Now, 2004 was a really big year for me for lots of different reasons. In October of 2004, Lydia and I got married. And then the month after we got married, I came down with dengue fever, also known as great bone fever, put me into maybe the worst hospital in all of Sri Lanka, where they provided me absolutely wickedly terrible medical attention. Let me give you a little piece of advice. If you ever find yourself in a hospital where they put the morgue next to the ICU, it's a bad sign, man. Go to the next hospital. You can do better, I promise. But I survived and emerged from the ICU just in time to celebrate my first and most tropical Christmas with my wife in Sri Lanka. And then the day after this Christmas of 2004, this happened.
The quake's epicenter was off the island of Sumatra in northwestern Indonesia, where more than 4,000 people are thought to have died. In Sri Lanka, officials say more than 3,000 people have been killed and more than 1 million affected. In southern India, 3,000 people, mostly fishermen, are reported dead. At least 300 have been killed in southern Thailand, including some tourists, and hundreds of people are missing. And waves swamped the low-lying Maldive Islands, leaving the capital Male 2/3 underwater. Gareth Furby reports.
So I'm guessing y'all weren't there, but you remember it really well, right? We watched a lot of TV together around the world the day after Christmas that year because we could not believe how quickly and dramatically the casualties rose to 230,000 lives, taken from a 9.1 subduction zone earthquake off of Banda Aceh, Indonesia, which triggered a tsunami that hit 16 different countries, including Sri Lanka, my then home, where 35,000 lives were taken in a matter of hours. Lydia and I worked side by side on the relief effort for the very first year. Myself in a very junior position, my wife in a very senior position of a very large multinational aid organization. And then, as you can imagine, after 1 year of unrelenting tsunami work, we got tired and decided it's time to leave. It's time to leave Sri Lanka and to go home to Klamath Falls, Oregon. There's not a train between Sri Lanka and Klamath Falls, in case you're wondering. But here's what was really significant about coming back to the Pacific Northwest. When I left the Pacific Northwest in 1996, at least at the civilian level, our level, I didn't hear a lot of people talking about earthquakes, let alone subduction zone earthquakes that trigger tsunamis. I go off overseas, get married, live through one of the largest natural disasters of the last 100 years, and then return to the Pacific Northwest to learn for the very first time in my life that we're waiting for the same exact thing to happen here. So I had that eerie feeling that I'm an Oregonian who has already lived through the future and made me want to talk about it. And tell you what, the first time I tried to talk about earthquake preparedness in Oregon is when I got a lesson in cultural reluctance. Thanksgiving, my first Thanksgiving with my in-laws. Has anyone ever had a tough in-law Thanksgiving? I think a lot of us have, right? So many things we can't talk about, but there was this moment of silence that I thought, you know what? This is the perfect moment to drop this question for the very first time. I'd never asked, I'd never brought it up. Okay? I'd never brought up earthquake preparedness. I didn't know what to expect. Here's what I got. First, I got a whole lot of silence, which then became discomfort, which leveled up to agitation. My brother-in-law kind of lost it for a bit. I really regretted having ever brought it up. By the way, our turkey was just fine. But you get the idea, right? It caused so much discomfort that I basically ruined that year's Thanksgiving. And here's what I learned from that first lesson. If I, as an Oregonian, who have gone through a tsunami event, can't safely talk about earthquake preparedness with my own family, how are you guys doing with that conversation? I think I know the answer. We're all struggling and avoiding that conversation. And here's why that's a problem. It's a cultural problem. No matter where you go in the world, we transmit culture in two very basic ways. Way number one, conversation. The things that we're willing to talk about at the kitchen table are part of our culture. The second way that we transmit culture is through the things that we see people doing. Let me give you just some very basic examples of visual culture, how we greet each other. Did you sit down and read a dummy's book for American greetings? No, you see people reach out to greet you and you meet them with the greeting that they expect. You stand in line mainly because you see other people standing in line. And I know you don't think that the fact that you eat pizza with your hands is cultural, but just try one time to be the person who sits down at that table with a knife and fork to eat a pizza. You know what usually happens? You usually get made fun of. And quadruply so if you happen to be the mayor of New York, in which case the New York Times itself goes out of its way to make fun of you. You know why you get made fun of? Because it's countercultural, just like preparedness still is. A lot of us get made fun of for preparing. Okay, true crimes confession for a second. How many of you have ever jaywalked? Oh my goodness, criminals, left and right. So, you, avowed jaywalkers, I want you to explain what happened here. This is Seattle. Believe it or not, they just won their very first Super Bowl. These people, they want to love, they want to hug, they want to high five, they want to celebrate. Yet, do you see what's going on here? They are waiting with incredible patience for the crosswalk signal. It's kind of extraordinary, right? Now I'm telling you what, I don't think that Seattleites are better behaved than the rest of the nation. What do you think really caused those people to stand in place that day? I guarantee everyone on that video has jaywalked just as much as you. What happened on that day, do you think? Any ideas? That's it? You had answers.
Yeah, you're in a group.
Yeah, you're in a group.
Other people.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and you're waiting, and all I know, I'm a committed jaywalker, people. If I see all you waiting, I'm going to wait too, because if I don't, I'm going to look and feel like a jerk. When you see other people adopting a behavior, you're likely to do so as well. Simple as that. But here's, again, the problem with preparedness. Not many of us see someone in our life preparing to set that example. I think you expect people to make eye contact when they're speaking with you. I think you expect people to wait in an orderly line at the movies. I think you even expect people to put on a seatbelt when they get into your car. But how many of you really expect people to get ready for this earthquake? How many of you expect people to get ready for this earthquake? That makes no sense. When I brought that same question to 3,000 people in Portland, I saw 4 hands go up. When I asked that question in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, and when I asked that question in Anchorage, Alaska, exactly 7 days before they had a 7-point magnitude earthquake, I got no answers. Why is that a problem? Because here's what culture basically is. Culture is all of us doing our very best to meet what we believe we expect of each other. That's what really drives culture. So here's the theory of everything we're going to learn tonight. If we can change the expectations that we have of each other, culture will naturally follow us. But before we can make a decision to completely go and change our lives this weekend, I think that we have to have a really good understanding of what we're trying to get ready for. So we're going to start out with a good old-fashioned geography lesson to make sure you have a good understanding of the Cascadia Subduction Zone. And I want to note a couple things. After this section, I'm going to take questions. And the second thing I want to note is that there are some people in this room right now who know a lot more about this earthquake than I do. So if I get stumped, I might call on some audience members to help me out, okay? I think I know who. Thank you, sir. I'm glad you're here. So here's the way that I would start my lesson if you were my sophomore year high school class. I would tell you that the Pacific Northwest is not only part of the United States. The Pacific Northwest is part of a larger, more entwined, ingrained, cohesive neighborhood known as this. What is this? Ring of Fire. We all know this, right? The Ring of Fire. And all these places around the Ring of Fire have a couple of basic and important things in common. We're going to start down here in New Zealand. Beautiful, mountainous, rugged landscape. Let's make our way north to the Philippines. Let's go all the way north to the Kamchatka region of Russia. It's gorgeous, all the way around the ring. Tell me the second thing that comes to mind that all these places have in common.
Around the water.
Mountains, volcanoes, ocean. Say again. Subduction, which creates earthquakes. Yes, earthquakes is the answer. It's like Voldemort, right? We don't like to say earthquake is the first answer. Yes, all these places have, in fact, the biggest earthquakes, such as Alaska, 1964, 9.2 magnitude. Chile, 1960, 9.5. Japan, 2011, 9.0. Mexico, September 19th, 1985. Mexico, September 19th, 2017. Same earthquake, same place, same day, 32 years, 7 hours apart. And y'all are a pretty young crowd, so I don't think that you were around for this one, but I think you know what earthquake this is. Which one? San Francisco, what year? 1906, exactly. The other thing that these places have in common, and you were getting to this, ma'am, is that they are along plate boundaries. The places that you find along plate boundaries produce the biggest earthquakes. And most of the places that we're looking at here are touching the edge of the Pacific plate. The interesting exception is us. We're not touching the edge of the Pacific plate. We're touching this teeny, tiny plate whose name is Cascades. Juan de Fuca, exactly. The Juan de Fuca plate is just like any other. It's just basically a big old puzzle piece. Here he is. There's the Juan de Fuca plate. Here's is the western edge of the Juan de Fuca plate. Here's the eastern edge going right underneath the continental shelf. It's just a puzzle piece. If we were to get into a submarine to go 300 miles out to sea to the border of the Pacific and the Juan de Fuca plate, along certain stretches of the ocean, it gets real stark that we're looking at 2 separate puzzle pieces. There's the Juan de Fuca plate to the east. There's the Pacific plate to the west. And let's remember, we're in high school again, so you should know that this is... It's Juan de Fuca. You've never seen this picture, have you? Because there's only one in all the internet. I'll tell you what, this guy has a big role in our lives, so we know we need to see his face at least one time. A1. Okay, there it goes. You're never going to see it again. So the basic story with the Juan de Fuca plate is it's moving towards us at a rate of about 1.5 inches per year. And over time, it has created that. What is that? Capital C. Cascades. Hence the Cascadia Subduction Zone that we've heard so much about. Same basic story is taking place with the Pacific plate, which is moving about 3 inches per year to the northwest, over time creating lots of different things, including the Japanese Alps. Do you see some similarities here? It's the same mountain range, 2 different places, but created by the same process known as subduction. So I want to give you an idea of how these plates form and why they move. I'm going to start with a very basic idea. This is just a lava lake in the Congo. But this lava lake in the Congo shows you basically how plates are formed. When lava comes up to the surface, plates are built as they cool. As more magma and lava comes up underneath, those plates spread. It's the basic mechanism of seafloor spreading. We're going to take a look at this same process on a larger scale. We're going to cut the earth in half with the power of our minds. And what you can see here is this, in fact, very, very slow churn of mantle, which is coming up underneath the surface of these 2 plates. There's the Pacific plate, there's the Juan de Fuca plate. And it's created like a convection current, which is pulling the Juan de Fuca plate slowly, slowly, slowly underneath your feet, in the same way that the Pacific plate is being pulled slowly, 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 slowly underneath Japan. And that's not the end of the process. This process creates so much friction, and water is being released from that plate. It's enough to actually melt the overlying mantle, which is reincarnated as things like Mount Fuji in Japan. Or coming back home, Mount Hood in Oregon, Mount Rainier in Washington. I don't think I have to tell you which one this is.
Yeah.
Say it though.
St. Helens.
Mount St. Helens, Mount St. Helens. All these forces created through subduction. What year was Mount St. Helens, by the way? 1980. Yet in 1993, when I was a sophomore in high school, this is the earthquake hazard map that was still being used in the United States. Do we see any issues with this? Because it gently suggests that we have an earthquake hazard zone that starts in Southern California, goes up to the Oregon-California border, it then disappears, but it magically reappears as soon as we cross the Columbia River. Significantly enough, I was a sophomore in high school in Klamath Falls, Oregon in 1993, when my geography teacher said, and I quote him directly, "There never have been, and there never will be earthquakes in Oregon." I'll give you one guess. What happened the very next day in Klamath Falls? I experienced my very first earthquake firsthand the day after that statement. And notably, so did the Salem area, thanks to the spring breakquake, which almost knocked the Pioneer right off the Capitol. Now, the thing about 1993, my geography teacher was not stupid, and geographers were not stupid. What they haven't successfully done yet is do a good timeline of earthquakes that have already happened in the Cascadia Subduction Zone to inform this map. And it's the work of people like Brian Atwater and Chris Goldfinger at OSU, who traced a lot of past earthquakes, which allowed us to start redrawing the map in a more accurate but tremendously unpopular manner. Because we can see now that we are in one of the most seismically at-risk places in the free world.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit more about subduction, because subduction is such a different kind of earthquake than the kinds of earthquakes that a lot of us know more about, such as in California with the San Andreas. When you hear the word subduction zone, I'm going to bring Juan de Fuca center stage. When you hear the word subduction zone, what we're talking about is where one plate is moving underneath another. The other plate in this question is North America. You are sitting on North America right now. But North America does not stop at the beach. North America actually goes 70 miles out to sea, and that's where the subduction zone actually begins. We're back in our submarine. To the left here, we can see the Juan de Fuca plate. To the right, you can see the North American plate where you're sitting. And remember how Juan de Fuca is moving, 1.5 inches per year towards us. Well, the problem is these 2 plates are locked. And because they're locked, the edge of North America is bowing like a ruler being pushed at two ends, and can only hold that much tension for so long until it gives way. And when it does give way, it essentially releases the Juan de Fuca plate to go under the edge of North America, which thrusts upwards in a super thrust earthquake. And because that thrusting is taking place underneath the ocean, naturally it's going to displace trillions of gallons of water and create a wave that goes north, south, west, and east simultaneously. I'm nearly certain that's every naughty word in the Japanese language. And we're going to talk a little bit more, actually a lot bit more about what to do about that wave a little bit later in the presentation. I want to talk to you also about the shaking that is released from this event. It's not just tsunamis, it's the shaking itself. So here's our fault line right here. It's about 650 miles north to south. Any place that's turning red along the fault line right here is where that thrusting action is beginning to take place, because the fault line is unzipping. Now you see these yellow rings? This is not the tsunami coming towards us, this is the shaking. The first shaking that you're likely to feel is called a P wave. A P wave is like a jolt, it's a jackhammering under your feet. It does very little damage. It's the moment you all look at each other and say, what was that? And that is a warning of what comes next. You see these red rings? These are called S waves, secondary waves. They move a lot slower, but based on the motion here, where the land begins to move vertically or begins to wind laterally, you can see that the S waves are going to do a lot more damage. I'm going to speed this earthquake up with the power of my mind so that you can see how big this event is. This fault line is about the same length as the San Andreas Fault, but the San Andreas Fault could never rip in a manner where San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego are all impacted by one continuous earthquake, right? The San Andreas Fault, think of it like a zipper, and a few teeth of that zipper will break at a time. And big earthquakes, releasing a lot of shaking. The worst case scenario with the Cascadia Subduction Zone is that we have a San Andreas-like earthquake, except Northern California, Western Oregon, Western Washington, and even Western Canada are all affected by one massive shaking event. That also creates a tsunami. And even though you've never seen this earthquake, if your grandparents grew up here, they've never seen this earthquake, it's a fairly frequent event. We've got record of about 43 8 and 9 point magnitude earthquakes in the last 10,000 years in the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which comes out to about one big earthquake on average, every 243 years. Which typically prompts people to ask, yeah, when was the last one? I'm so glad I've got an answer for that. The answer to that is January 26, 1700 at 9 p.m. And we've got three very distinct bodies of evidence to point us to that precise number. The first reason we know so much about that last earthquake is because it was witnessed. There's the Juan de Fuca plate, there's the Cascadia Subduction Zone right there. That last earthquake, January 26, 1700, was witnessed by about a dozen tribes going all the way from Northern California up to Vancouver Island, Canada, which tell similar stories of a massive shaking event followed by a high water event. This is trademark subduction zone earthquake activity. The second reason we know a lot about that last earthquake are because of something called ghost forests along the coast of Washington. This is in the Copalis River Valley, and here's the gist of what a ghost forest is. You see all this hardy red cedar, healthy as could be. You see right here, we have a dead zone where all these trees up and died seemingly at the very same moment without any sign of blight, any sign of bark beetle. What happened here? Now we understand that during that last earthquake, 1700, the edge of North America settled during that 9 point magnitude earthquake. So much that it dropped some tidal forests right into the tidal zone. And to add insult to injury, the tsunami came and saturated those roots, and last I checked, red cedar doesn't do very well in salt water. But here's the kicker. Here's the last piece of evidence, and it's a beautiful one. Remember that tsunami? Remember what I said about tsunamis. They don't just go one direction. They go all directions. January 26, 1700, 9 p.m., we had a 9-point magnitude earthquake, which triggered a tsunami that went all the way across the Pacific Ocean to strike a country that has diligently tracked its own tsunami earthquake activity since 599 AD. And that country would be Japan. If you're ever uncertain, yell out Japan. It's almost always the right answer. And they called this the orphan tsunami. Tell me why. What made it the orphan?
They didn't have the earthquake.
Yeah, they didn't have the earthquake. This was an underachievement of a tsunami by Japanese standards, but it was a really confusing one. Where was the mother that gave birth to this little tsunami? And it was in, I believe, 1993 that Brian Atwater wrote a beautiful book called The Orphan Tsunami, which successfully pieced together that orphan tsunami, which locked together perfectly with those ghost forests in his home state, which corroborated what Pacific Northwest tribes have told us for 319 years. We are in earthquake country. And with that, you just passed your sophomore level high school class. So congratulations. Do you have any questions? Yes?
I need to clarify that the people in Alaska and Anchorage, 1964, people were killed and they aren't doing they have no preparedness? I mean, that is a park people go to.
Yes, so no, I'm not going to say that Alaska has not done preparedness. What I would say is still doesn't seem to be in the culture necessarily of people to talk about preparedness, but I'd say evidence of their mitigation, something that Tiffany talked about, is that when they had that 7-point magnitude earthquake in November, they had, I believe, 1 injury, 0 fatalities. They had 1 major road bust up, which they managed to address in about 48 hours flat. So there's something about preparedness infrastructure and resilience infrastructure that they're a bit ahead of the game. And one of the things that we get from past earthquakes is a jump start on getting ready for the next one. That's one thing that we're kind of missing in the Pacific Northwest. We look in the past, and 1700 is a long time ago for that last earthquake, right? So we haven't had those intervening earthquakes that kind of act like an antibiotic to help us get ready for future ones. That make sense? So all these little 4.2s, they've always been happening. Any place that you've got a major plate boundary, it's going to frequently have 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. And sometimes we will see a cluster of earthquakes that precedes a big earthquake, but when I see those 4.2 earthquakes, I don't really worry about it. Do you worry about it? Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick? Because I'm going to refer to you every once in a while. Go ahead.
Pat Corcoran, OSU Extension Service in Clatsop County here, coastal hazards guy.
Thank you, Pat. It's an honor to meet you. I've never met Pat. Yeah,
This is really great so far, I have to say.
I'm so relieved you said that. Because it would be a long last hour for everyone if you said otherwise. So thank you, Pat. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Are you involved with the preparedness kit Legacy advertised on Fox News?
I'm not involved with any preparedness kit, but I think you'd see advertised on Fox News. I do have a partnership.
It airs all the time.
Say again. I'm involved with a company called Red Fora. But I'm not selling you kits today. I don't take commissions on kits either.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Don't worry, I'm not going to sucker punch you with selling you something at the end of tonight, I promise. Okay, let's keep going. Let's start talking about people and how people behave during earthquakes and why. So, the way you're going to see in this section is essentially we're not wired to do earthquakes right. So I want to start by talking about the good behavior during an earthquake. I hope you've seen this before. During an earthquake or any large shaking event, you're to drop to the ground, you're to take cover underneath something sturdy, and you're to hold on. Is this familiar with y'all? Have we seen this before?
Yeah.
I want to make sure you actually believe that these are 3 smart steps to take, because if you don't think this is smart, you're not going to do it. So tell me why you drop to the ground. What are you accomplishing by dropping to the ground as quickly as possible?
Getting small.
Yeah, don't fall down. Don't fall down, don't hurt yourself. That's rule number 1. You take cover under something sturdy. Why?
You don't get hit.
Yeah, dumb stuff that hits you in the head, okay? Projectors, speakers, the things that hit you in the head, that's what you're taking cover from. And you hold on to whatever you are beneath. Why?
So it doesn't go away.
Yeah, it's shaking. It's going to get away from you like an umbrella in a hurricane if you don't hold on. You drop, you cover, you hold on. This makes sense? And you have to practice. And the practice bit is where we have another piece of cultural reluctance that is strong. I hope you've heard of the Great Shakeout. It's where we pretend we're having an earthquake, and you're a really good sport, and you get under the table. I know how you feel about earthquake drills. This guy, he shows it. Lame. Oh my God, I feel so patronized. However, during any earthquake drill, what I want you to think about is this mannequin. This is just a mannequin, just a mannequin, just a mannequin. But imagine how much better off that mannequin would be had it had the legs to get under that desk. I think that explains really succinctly why drop, cover, and hold on. However, it does not explain why we have to practice. The reason it's necessary to practice for earthquakes is because you're likely to not be alone. And if you're not alone during an earthquake, we very quickly steer each other in the wrong direction, just like we can see in Japan, 2011. Here we go. We're in a wine store. You're not seeing any dropping, covering, nor holding. I do want to point out that someone is taking the time to videotape this entire event with their phone. The woman in beige is the manager. And what you're going to see is that she's giving some pretty clear direction to her staff. What is she doing? Yeah, exactly. Not everyone knows how to hold up a wine rack, so she's giving some guidance. This guy, I think he's from out of town. And he's looking for guidance in the cereal section because he's not going to participate in the human wine buttress. Same earthquake. No one gets hurt in this video. No one gets hurt in this video. I want you to look right behind this reporter's shoulder, because there you can see what's happening. The facade is peeling right off this building, probably one of the most seismically ready neighborhoods in the world. And you've got very well-dressed businessmen running into the most dangerous spot that they could possibly be. The reason you see these bizarre behaviors, even in a place like Japan that has a lot of earthquake experience, is because of what happens to your brain during earthquakes. This is your brain right now. This is your frontal cortex. Your frontal cortex is the smart part of your brain. If you have ever had a job, thank your frontal cortex. It's methodical, it's analytical, it takes the evidence and makes decisions, but the problem during earthquakes is so much information is coming at you so quickly, your frontal cortex gets overwhelmed, and you start to shift all your decision making to your amygdala. See how dumb and small your amygdala are? Real close to your brainstem? This is a non-thinking part of your brain. And what your amygdala is likely to do during an earthquake is explosively decide to do one of these 3 things. 1, your amygdala will tell you to follow the guidance of the most confident, authoritative person in the room. And since I'm the guy with a mic, that's me right now. And if we had an earthquake right now, and I ran for that door, what do you think you'd do? Here we go. Pretty soon you're holding up a wine rack. You don't even know how you ended up there, right? Secondly, your amygdala will do nothing. This guy's doing a slow download of all the files of evolutionary history, and he's realizing right now that he has never been in a wine store during an earthquake. He's got no instinctual response, he does nothing. But more likely than those 2 responses is your amygdala will tell you to run to try to find a place where an earthquake is not occurring. As you can see, your amygdala is likely to steer you in the wrong direction, and this is the part of your brain that's making decisions. The only way to get your dumb amygdala to do the right thing is to take 2 steps. 1, just like firefighters, practice, right? Firefighters practice fighting fires because they know that it's an activity that they need to do scared. That's why we practice. It's what your amygdala responds to. 2, the other thing you can do with your amygdala is make decisions before the earthquake. Go home. Go back to the office. Start to identify the big chunky furniture that you would want to get under. And if you make that decision tonight, if you have an earthquake tomorrow, you're more likely to explosively make that right decision. If you don't have a big chunky piece of furniture to get under, you're still going to get down to the ground and grab anything you can to cover the back of your head and neck, the most vulnerable parts of your body. If you're in a wheelchair, you're going to lock those wheels at the beginning of the shaking, grab a book if you've got one at hand, and you're going to hold on. If you've got a small child, like a baby in arms, here's what you're going to do.
Earthquake, get saved.
You're still going to drop, still going to cover, still going to hold, but with that child to your chest, that's 2 layers of protection for that baby. And about the time that child hits, I'd say 3 or 4 years old, do drop, cover, hold drills with him. This is my role, dude. And we're in the library. And I did not tell him to do this. Tell you what, once you start practicing with kids, it's kind of hard to turn it off. So I spent a lot of time explaining what's wrong with my kids. However, tell you what, the light bulb went off for me that I knew that this was paying dividends when I took my boys to OMSI, where they had this like earthquake shake table. Do you want to try and find my boys on the shake table? They're pretty easy to identify. They didn't look at each other, they didn't ask permission, they didn't have any questions, they dropped to the ground like a bag of rocks. And there they are. If you don't have anything to get under, you're going to make the best decision you can. I don't want to be next to a plate glass window, I don't want to be under a speaker, I don't actually want to be next to a border wall either, but I'm still going to get all the way down to the ground so I don't fall, and crouch so I cover my abdomen and the back of my head and neck. If you're in your car during an earthquake, firstly, you're likely to be the last person who realizes there's an earthquake going on because those shock absorbers are absorbing all that shaking. Once you do realize there's an earthquake going on, you're going to pull over in the safest spot that you can, which I'd say means not next to a building if you can avoid it, not under an overpass if you can avoid it, but do stay in your car, put it in park, keep your seatbelt on, and remain in your car because as bad as this looks, Chile 2010, these people having remained in their cars would be protected from the mortar that falls. Now, Astoria is a place with a lot of buildings that have brick facades, and I want to show you what I saw in Christchurch, New Zealand, 2011. Now, yes, it looks terribly bad at first, but here's something I want you to note of this building. Yes, the facade came off, but guess what? The building remained upright. So thinking about that building, if you happen to be walking along this thoroughfare outside, I would get to the other side of these cars. Traffic will naturally stop during an earthquake and crouch down. That way, if any of the facades do come off, you're going to be shielded from the bricks that come. If you're in your bedroom, I'm going to assume that you are asleep. So we need to do a little hazard hunt in your bedroom to make it safe before the earthquake. So what would you do in this bedroom to make it safer? The anvil. I mean, people, why would you put an anvil up there? That makes no sense, right? Okay. So anything heavy, you want to get waist level or lower so it doesn't hurt you. What else would you change? Okay. I think someone said the bookshelf right here. We're going to talk about how to anchor bookshelves in a little bit, but find the studs behind that bookshelf and get it anchored. Someone said about the window. You've got a couple of choices with the window. For one, you can, if your bedroom's big enough, yes, move the bed away from the window. If it's a small bedroom and you don't have enough room to move it away, then there's something called safety film that you can put over the windows. It's transparent, but what it does is when the window breaks, it keeps it intact so that it doesn't shatter out on you. I'm hoping this guy doesn't show up for the earthquake. He doesn't look any good. So you've made your bedroom safer. Now you wake up to an earthquake, right? You're going to wake up to a full-blown earthquake. You don't really have much time to make a decision at this point. You've made your room safer. All I'm going to have you do is take that pillow, put it over your head, go face down in your bed, and then you're just going to ride your bed as if it's every wall of your bedroom. That's it. That is your big plan. I would not have you get under the bed because you are a full-fledged adult. and I don't think you fit under your bed anymore. And also, even if you could fit under your bed weighs probably 200 pounds with the box spring, and it's going to be jumping up and down for several minutes. I don't think it's a safe place to be. So remain in bed during the earthquake, and as soon as the shaking is done and your bed is parked, you've got to get out of your house. That's why you've got, 1, a sturdy pair of shoes right next to your bed. For bonus points, you might want to tie those shoes together and even tie them to the foot of your bed so that shoe A and shoe B do not go to 2 different places. Of course, we're worried about that window breaking if it's not secure. So we're trying to prevent all those shards of glass from cutting our feet, which is the #1 injury after an earthquake. Just in case you do cut your feet, you got a little first aid kit right next to your bed. You got a pair of leather gloves right next to your bed to prevent injuries. Next, you got a crowbar. And the reason for the crowbar, take a look back here at this door. During an earthquake, what happens sometimes is the door frame gets twisted out of shape and pinches the door in place. Now we got to use that crowbar to open it up. Next, you got a sweater. This is a keeper of a sweater. Even if you don't like it, put it under your bed. Always get ready for winter earthquakes because we got to stay warm. Also, make the assumption that it is going to be absolutely penetratingly dark. And a lot of us have flashlights next to our bed, right? In this case, I'd prefer you make the small investment of getting a headlamp. So you can keep your hands free, you can get your shoes tied, use that crowbar if necessary. It's going to be a lot easier to do all that with a headlamp. Here's my wife and my bed kit. This is not the grand home kit. This is simply what we have under our bed. 2 pairs of shoes, first aid kit, crowbar, couple of headlamps, and a sweater ready to go. A few other scenarios. What if you find yourself in a theater, such as this? Because you know what these people are likely to do during an earthquake. What are they going to do?
Run.
They're going to run. Specifically, where are they going to run? Yeah, do you see a problem here? In this case, the problem is 3,000 divided by 4, which is a bad math problem and a bad safety problem. What I believe is going to be the safest response if you find yourself in a crowded theater during an earthquake is, it's going to take some courage because you want to follow other people. I think the safest thing to do is take a breath, remain seated, and look straight up over your head. That's your first move. What do you see over your head? Do you see a chandelier? Do you see a projector?
Yes.
Do you see
Yes.
a stereo system? If so, man, I've got news. You're in the wrong seat. But here's the good news. That place probably cleared out. So you can probably sit any place you want in that theater at this point. So move to a safer seat. And once you get to the safer seat, you've got a choice at this point. If you can safely get your head underneath the seat, I would do so to cover the back of your head and neck. If you cannot safely get down to the ground without injuring yourself, I'm going to say that again. If you cannot get down to the ground without injuring yourself, I would have you take the brace position, just like you're in an airplane. Does that make sense? Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. How long was that, y'all? It felt like a long time, but it's pretty short. How long was that in reality? It's 1 minute. It's 1 minute flat. Next question. 1 minute. That was 1 minute. It feels longer because of the awkwardness, really. But how long?
Did we get on the floor?
could the shaking be for a 9-point magnitude earthquake? You got it. You got it. We're looking 3, 4, 5 minutes for a larger subduction zone earthquake, which is a lot longer than most people expect. Now, let's talk about the things you expect and the things you don't expect during an earthquake. Of course you expected the rumbling. Of course you expected the breaking glass. Did you guys hear all the horns? Yeah, that's every single car outside. They all think they're being stolen simultaneously. So all the cars are going off. Also, any system in this building, could be a fire system, could be a burglary system, anything that can make noise is going to start making noise. The other thing I would expect is that it is going to become absolutely penetratingly dark, just like we can see here, Japan 2011, a post-earthquake blackout. And to give you an idea of how black this blackout could be, Northridge, California, 1994, outskirts of Los Angeles, California, early morning earthquake, people are streaming into the streets, they're calling 911, and not just about the earthquake. There was a lot of concern about a hazardous gas that had appeared in the sky, which we later learned was the Milky Way. Okay. Typically, you only see the Milky Way in the open ocean and the desert, right? It gives you an idea of how black a post-earthquake blackout can become, even in the outskirts of a place like Los Angeles. Now, here's one more bonus. You never see this one coming, and you're gonna hate it. Even if you're inside, you're gonna get wet. Let me show you how a sprinkler works. See that little vial right there? You shake that hard enough, and it breaks, and releases all of that water. So I would expect to be completely drenched, even if you're inside during an earthquake. So I want to talk a little bit. Yes, go ahead.
All right, if you may.
Go ahead.
In this building here, which a lot of us go to a lot, would this baby come down, and would this mezzanine, would you expect this mezzanine to come down? I would expect those speakers to come off.
So yeah, the speakers I'm worried about. I would love to have a facilities manager to actually answer that. I would feel safer being up here than being back there. Just instinctually, I'm liking it more up here than I am back there.
What do you mean, like where these folks are sitting?
I'm saying right, you see the first 10 rows here? I feel like that's probably a safer zone than the back there. But again, I'm not a facility, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not telling you that that's falling. I'm just not sure. I'd want someone from Liberty Theater to take that answer for me. But my instincts tell me I'd rather be in the front rows than the back rows.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I'll remember that when it happens.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the social reaction and how we actually process earthquakes, mostly because we have such great evidence, thanks to the earthquakes that the outer Los Angeles region had 4 months ago, of how people actually react in real time to earthquakes on air. These are two anchors who are on air, and it gives you an idea of how your brain reacts to earthquakes and how you respond to them. So take a look at this.
Here we're making sure that nothing is going...
Stage one. Stage one is what I call the onset of awareness. When you feel shaking, you do a process of elimination. Okay? Did someone drop the safe upstairs? Is there a rhinoceros running next door? Is the dryer on spin cycle? No. We're having an earthquake. I call it the onset of awareness. And now we move forward from the awareness.
To come down in the studio here.
And it is going for quite a bit of
Pretty strong.
Stage two.
Stay strong.
If it's not clear, fear has taken hold. He's kind of lost his game face. Now, the significance of the fear moment is this is when your frontal cortex just got unplugged. And your amygdala is now at the helm making decisions. And your amygdala is very impressionable. So here we go forward.
Shaking. I think we need to get under the deck.
Next, milling. What you're doing with milling's not a safety decision. Milling is a social decision. I'm trying to decide what I'm going to do based on what I see you doing, and you doing, and you doing, and you doing. In fact, what I see you guys doing is going to make that decision for me. And then finally, we make a decision.
All right, we're going to go to break.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back.
Wow.
Okay.
Still there.
One for 2. No, he's putting game face back on. That's what's going on there. So I know that was just 12 seconds start to finish, but that is not the ideal reaction. We don't want to mill. We want to act really quickly. I want to show you the ideal earthquake reaction. 2 other anchors a few years ago. Again, Los Angeles. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This goes fast.
Coming up, more problems for a troubled
Earthquake.
Yep.
We're having an earthquake. Boom. 3 seconds, start to finish. So this is a brilliant reaction, actually for 3 completely different reasons. First, the obvious reason. The sooner you act, the less likely you are to get hurt. 1. Secondly, they went straight from the onset of awareness to action, which means they didn't get scared. They acted so quickly, they acted before they got scared, before their dumb amygdala started to steer them in opposite directions. And did you notice they didn't mill? They didn't look to each other and try to encourage each other. You know why? I think that they had a conversation before this earthquake, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, to say if we ever have an earthquake when we're on air, we get under this table. And they acted. And the third reason that it's important to act quickly is for other people who are scared, who are impressionable, and they're looking for an example. If I and you and you and you act really quickly and decisively at the very early moments of the earthquake, we are likely to steer all of you to follow that same reaction, a social chain reaction. That's what you're hoping to do. So you taking care of yourself really quickly actually benefits the entire room. So what do we do after the earthquake? We just got through the earthquake. Our very next move in Astoria is going to depend on something very simple. Are you on which side of this sign? So first I want to talk about what you're going to do after the earthquake if you find yourself on this side of the hazard zone. So let's start there. Let's start with tsunami preparedness. And to do my tsunami preparedness exercise, I actually want to take you to Nescoin. Have you guys been to Nescoin? You know what we're looking at here? Tree stumps. And you know why there are tree stumps there now, because we looked at it before. 2,000 years ago, we had another 9.9 magnitude earthquake that dropped a perfectly good forest right into the tidal zone and left this nice little petrified ghost forest right into the tidal zone. But first of all, when it comes to tsunami preparedness, everyone needs to be on the same page. That includes even your smallest kids.
I accidentally put sand in my mouth.
Yeah, even that little dude needs to know what to do. I want all my kids, and we came here today and we had this discussion, that we are staying in a tsunami hazard zone. What that means is that we are within reach of either a distant tsunami or a local tsunami. I'm going to talk for a second about distant tsunamis. Usually I don't, but you could experience distant tsunamis here. A distant tsunami would originate from another place a long way away, not the Cascadia Subduction Zone, but much further away, such as, I want to take any guess where we might get a distant, Japan? How long do you think it would take a distant tsunami to reach us from Japan? About 10 to 12 hours? Somewhere in there? Tell me another one that would be a likely candidate for producing a distant tsunami. Alaska, exactly. Say that's going to be about 3 hours to get from Alaska down to here. Basically, tsunamis on open water travel about the same speed as a jetliner. So ask yourself, how long would it take to fly there? That's usually how long would it take a tsunami to reach here. And oftentimes, before the tsunami actually reaches us, we can experience an incredible low tide event, where what's something called a negative wave reaches us, sucking the tide out a long way before the positive tsunami wave arrives. This is a really interesting example of a negative wave. This is, I know this picture is absolute garbage, but what you're seeing here, this is 1956. This is Hawaii, and this is a boat, this is a harbor full of boats that have settled all the way down to the floor of the ocean. And these people are gathered around curious as to why these boats just landed on the bottom of the harbor. The answer is because they just had a major earthquake in Alaska that triggered a tsunami that is going to be coming there in a matter of minutes. They don't realize it. We saw the same thing in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, before the tsunami came, we had a low tide event where we saw coral reef trees. Have you ever seen a coral reef tree? It's a radical event. And the way that a lot of people reacted is that they ran out as far as they could. As far as they could to try to find the ocean. People were actually trying to claim land in Sri Lanka because they thought that the Hilton just lost beachfront property, that they'd be able to sell them back. True stories. Obviously, if you see a low tide event like this, it means it's time to go. But the way you're most likely to get notification that the tsunami is coming is through Clatsop Alerts, one of Tiffany's programs. If you subscribe into the Clatsop Alerts program, you're going to get a notice on your phone that you are at risk, that tsunami is on its way. So I'd encourage you to get on the Clatsop Alerts. Am I right on that?
Are you?
The one we're more worried about, though, is a local tsunami, one that would be triggered by the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Local tsunamis come in high, they come in hard, they come in fast, and they come in with very little warning. Clatsop Alerts is not likely to be able to help you to evacuate from a local tsunami. You're not going to get the notice from there. How are you going to know, if you're in Astoria, that you're at risk of that big local tsunami coming your way? What's the signal we're looking for in this case?
Earthquake.
Yeah, that's it. If you just were sent a 5-minute earthquake, the very next thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a tsunami. It's going to take probably 10 to 15 minutes from the end of the shaking to the first tsunami to arrive. Once you're going to drop, cover, and hold during the actual earthquake, as soon as the earthquake is done, the moment the earthquake is done, you're going to follow the tsunami evacuation route signs up to the evacuation site, which is typically put about 100 feet or more above sea level. And you're going to remain there for every tsunami that comes through. The third, the fourth, the fifth, maybe the sixth. It's likely to take 2, 3, 4 hours for the entire tsunami train to go through. Now, I'll tell you how my wife, if you travel the coast much, I'm going to tell you how my wife and I get ready for tsunamis wherever we go. First of all, thank you, Tiffany. You put us, 1, in the Holiday Inn, which is really nice, but 2, right in the tsunami zone. Tiffany actually said, she's like, if you can convince them to get to the far east side of the building, you're going to be safer from the bridge. Noted and successful. I did get to that side. Now, knowing this, before I arrived today, I looked up your local tsunami evacuation map for Astoria, and once again, I found that Holiday Inn and identified, first of all, that yes, based on the color coding, we're definitely in a local tsunami area. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for green. What is the closest source of green? Bam, right there. And right before coming here tonight, you know what I did with my family? We took a 3-minute walk as a family from point A to point B, explaining to my 6-year-old, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, if you get woken up by an earthquake in the middle of tonight, you're going to drop down to the ground for all 5 minutes. We're going to take the stairwell down from the 4th floor, not the elevator. We're going to take the stairwell down, and this is the path that we're going to follow up to this spot at Columbia and Esplanade. But my kids know it. We're on the same page, no delay whatsoever. The other place you can do that really well, as far as drawing out a map, is nanus.org. Nanus.org has the same color coding that you're going to see in the maps that are handed out by Clatsop County Emergency Management. Yellow being a local earthquake, orange being a distant earthquake. And again, you see it's consistent as far as the routing for my own family, but it has a couple of bonuses. Nanus.org can show you where the unreinforced bridges are so that you know not to cross those ones. They can show you where the fire departments are and other resources as well. Now again, there's a social dynamic to tsunami evacuation as well, just like earthquakes. And I want to give you a real case study of tsunami evacuation gone wrong in Gold Beach, Oregon, way down in southern Oregon. Gold Beach is ready for earthquakes. They're ready for tsunamis. They've got the same tsunami evacuation signs. They had sirens, at least up to 2 years ago, they had tsunami sirens. And on this particular day, when there was a false alarm with the tsunami siren, a full false alarm, there was a woman there who knew exactly what to do during a tsunami. And I can vouch for her because she has been through this training 3 times. And what she saw during this false alarm alarmed her enough to tell this story to you.
So it was my birthday, so we were at Gold Beach, and we did a bonfire right at sunset, and all of a sudden the alarms started going off, and I freaked out. I was like, I dropped the hot dog, and I'm like, yeah, it's a tsunami! We gotta go! And then I started looking around, and nobody was reacting. I mean, everybody kind of stopped. It was just, you know, on the beach, like, they had their dogs, and they're kind of, and then I looked over, and I saw a group that was bonfiring, so I then ran over to them, and they were from another country. So I was like, what do we do? And they were like, we don't know. Part of me not leaving the beach, even though I know I should, was because nobody else did, so I thought maybe I was being silly.
Take that in for a second. This woman thought real tsunami was coming her way. She's with her fiance, has every reason to get him out safely. And what does she do? She starts to act, and she looked back. And y'all did nothing. And she lost her nerve, and she walked back because she was scared, her amygdala were impressionable, and also because one of the things your amygdala does, as you saw with that guy in the grocery store, oftentimes we underreact, and she followed other people's underreaction. Moral of the story, just like earthquake drills, if we can start drop, cover, hold really quickly, won't affect other people with the right decision. Same thing with tsunami evacuation. Evacuate no matter what you see other people doing, because everyone needs an example. And a lot of people on the beach right now are from Michigan, they're from Connecticut, and they have no idea what to do during a tsunami event. So that's the basis of what you do if you're inside the tsunami zone. Let's talk about the other side. You just went through an earthquake and you're on the other side of the tsunami zone. Immediately after that earthquake, I would advise you go outside, and you've got a few tasks to do if you're outside the tsunami zone already. First of all, you're going to do first aid. Let me see. I lost my mic somewhere along the way. Nope, I'm just going to yell. Can y'all hear me? Okay. So, first thing, you're going to do first aid. You're going to take care of each other. You're going to use the first aid skills and the kits that you have first, after that earthquake. Next, you're going to take a look at your gas. Do you smell gas? Do you hear gas coming from your home? Do you look at the meter and see that the meter is spinning like crazy? That's a sign of a gas leak. You need to turn your gas off right after that, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later. Next, you're going to take a look for fires. If you see any fire taking place in your home or your neighborhood, you're going to put it out quickly. Just a reminder, you always point at the base of the fire, not the top of the fire. Go home tonight, take a look at the meter on your fire extinguisher. Make sure it's in the green to make sure that it's absolutely ready to go. After an earthquake, if you don't need to put out a fire, that's great. Just take that fire extinguisher and put it on your front sidewalk or in the hallway of your apartment. Tell me why. What's that again? Exactly. Your neighbor's fire is going to become your fire really quickly if you don't give them exactly the idea that they need. And lastly, you're going to take a sign, you're going to put OK on it, and you're going to put it on your front door and just watch. You're going to trigger other people in your neighborhood to do the exact same. And that's super important because eventually someone will put help on their door. And knowing that you're okay, and you're okay, and you're okay, we're going to be able to mobilize as a neighborhood to help those who need it. And now that we've just gone through a big event, let's go back to a week before the earthquake and make your home a lot safer. This is a super easy kit to put together. L brackets, long sturdy screws. Go visit your neighbor, get a stud finder. Every neighbor has one stud finder, I guarantee it. Go to Amazon, look up earthquake straps. With this simple kit, go into your home, identify big tall furniture like this. This is my home. This is the first piece of furniture I took care of. Took that stud finder, found 2 big studs behind this, used those earthquake straps, and I secured it. Bam, won't tip over. Because I was so happy with that very small accomplishment, I looked at the other side of that same room, and I saw an old community center piano, took that stud finder, found 4 studs behind it, took those L brackets, and I secured it right up against the wall. And having done so, I'm going to encourage you to talk to your partner before you do that. You're going to be so busted. So have the right talk. Say, man, we're doing drop, cover, hold drills with the kids underneath that table. Let's make sure the piano and the hutch don't endanger them, and then you can go crazy with your neighbor's stud finder. The other thing that needs to be secured is your water heater, because it is a good source of water, and it's also a hazard, because if it's not secure, it is going to crack open, most likely. You're going to lose maybe 80 gallons of good drinking water. Worse than that, it's probably gas heated, which means it's going to catch fire. If you think it can't get worse than that, just go 1989 Marina, San Francisco. When the water mains are broken, those fires spread unchecked. How can we prevent that? Simple. Just make sure there are 2 big, sturdy straps on that water heater. If you don't see that in your home, go to your local plumbing store, find a plumber, and make sure you get that secured. Shaking. Do you have is there any shaking scenario that I did not cover that you have a question about? Yes?
What if we're in a car on a neighbor bridge or one of the Morrison bridges? You just roll over and push and create a wound?
So, here's what, no, it's a super tough one. That's a super tough one. And I'm going to invite Tiffany. Tiffany, if you've got a different answer that I give, please come up and give this answer. What I say is that I'm going to drive as far as I can along that bridge.
Repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you are on a bridge during an earthquake, this is the basic question. If you find yourself on a bridge during an earthquake, I'm going to advise you actually do keep driving in hopes of reaching the other side. As soon as you can't get any further, I would in this case try to get out of that car. And if this is an older bridge, I want to run for the closest shore. Right? Whatever the closest side of that bridge is, that's the direction I would try to get to. It's not an ideal situation. Do you have a better answer than that, Tiffany?
I don't. After do you?
Okay. You wanted a better answer, but that's all we got.
Question? I had friends down in San Francisco, Oakland area when that overpass collapsed, and they said that they survived by sheer luck. But they were toward the outside of the collapse, and they were able to get out that way.
Down the outside of the bridge.
outside of the road. So instead of being in the middle of the overpass or the road, they went to the edges.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
it was sheer luck.
yeah, I mean, that might be a sheer, I'm not sure if that's actually a guideline or if that's just kind of sheer luck. You're saying that if you find yourself on the bottom side of a 2-lane overpass, that to be on the outside, you might have better luck.
Level came down and they said they were kind of propelled out.
Okay, yeah. I'm not sure if that could be a consistent guideline or not. Sometimes sheer luck happens. Let's hope for that. Yeah, you.
So I worked with Dr. Goldfinger when I was with the major car company in the Portland area.
Okay.
And he explained that wave is going to come in at 16,000 miles per hour, okay, the earthquake, and the 3 minutes is going to consist of displacement 3 to 6 feet, like this for 3 minutes. Now, holding on for 3 minutes like that is going to be tough enough. But any other perspective here for coasties who haven't had to live through earthquakes, small, medium, or large, on how to deal with displacement of 3 to 6 feet?
I'm going to defer to maybe Patrick on that. Go ahead.
Sure. And I think by displacing you need to subside where you drop down. Yeah. Yeah. So
Here, hang on, Patrick.
what was the first part of your question?
So the initial wave is going to come roaring in at 16,000 miles per hour, and then for 3 minutes, I'm 6 feet tall.
Yep.
So for 3 minutes, the ground's going to move like this. That's what the whole thing.
Here, yeah, so you're talking about the earthquake.
Yes, it's shaking. It's beyond shaking. It's displacement.
It is, but it's also interesting. He was in the Japanese earthquake in 2011 and experienced it. And what other people have told me, I have not been in one, and I hope I'm not ever. But they're rollers, and they're actually more nauseating than they are sort of violent. Like a San Andreas is more violent about like stuff flying across the room. But the subduction zones, because we're basically relaxing, we're going 3 to 6 feet. It's a different feeling for humans, and it's not as traumatic as we might imagine. What you're suggesting, though, is after it's all over, now sea level is 3 to 6 feet higher than it was before, semi-permanently, until a couple hundred years. And so that's a long-term impact that we have to have. But I've been told that the earthquake itself is very survivable. It's a 9, it lasts forever, but it is less violent than some and survivable. So that's the good news about that.
The other thing you talked about was liquefaction.
Yeah, so liquefaction. The basics of liquefaction, as far as I understand it, is any place that you've got low-lying, silty soils and sands that are saturated with water during an earthquake. It's like squeezing a sponge. As all those soils get squeezed together, the water gets squeezed out, and the water shoots out the surface and turns the surface topsoil into pudding. Basically, yes, this is true. I've never heard as far as a protocol for it to be any different. Like you being in a liquefaction zone, I wouldn't say your protocol is going to be any different than your drop, cover, hold on. But yes, you're right that liquefaction is something that's going to have a big toll, especially on the infrastructure, which is the next thing I want to talk about. We're going to get into raw preparedness now, but before we can talk about preparedness, we got to talk about what just happened to the infrastructure, because the infrastructure breakdown is what we're trying to get ready for. First of all, here's part of the reason the infrastructural breakdown is hard. It's because of where we are right now. Right now, you're sitting in the middle of tens of thousands of people who seamlessly bring you running water, gas, heat, electricity, and flushing toilets on a daily basis. And things that don't come right to you, you've got cell phones and debit cards and cars, and you go get the other really important stuff like food and medical attention. The problem with earthquakes is it's not just one disaster, it's a cascading disaster. This is Northridge, 1994. The first disaster is the shaking. The second disaster, and the third disaster, and the fourth disaster is the loss of infrastructure. You can see from the broken water mains that we're not going to have running water and flushing toilets for a period of time. See the gas mains? You just lost cooking, you just lost heat in your home. You can see all the power lines here. We're going to lose not only light, we're also going to lose our debit card, credit card use, and when our cell phones die, they're not going to be easy to recharge. And clearly, our car is not going anywhere, which takes out access to medical attention and to the grocery store. And also, it's going to be very difficult to bring in aid from the outside because of what happens to runways, airport runways, from liquefaction. Essentially, this is what PDX expects. This is what Eugene expects. This is what Medford expects. This is what they expect in most of our runways, that they're going to have speed bumps on them after the earthquake because of the shaking and because of the liquefaction. So let's start with the mindset of preparedness for this type of event where we lose all of our utilities and services and the ability to receive things from the outside. Let's start with this. Camping. Camping is something that we know well in the Pacific Northwest. It's basically when you willingly go to a remote place for an extended period of time without any services. How many of you have ever gone camping? Once. And look at that, 100% survival rate. Congratulations. So, the gist of earthquake preparedness is that instead of going camping, we're getting ready for camping to come to us. If you're ready to spontaneously camp, the three places you're going to find yourself: home, car, work. If you can spontaneously camp in those three places, you're as ready for this earthquake as you could possibly be. And the gist of putting together a kit is you are trying to find items to replace the 9 utilities and services that we lost due to the earthquake. Now, I want to make one note for a coastal community. When you're putting together this 2 weeks of supply, and by the way, I think you should probably go more like 3 weeks or a month of supplies after the earthquake in a coastal community, first, you've got the question of where are you going to put all this stuff? Again, what side of the tsunami hazard zone do you find yourself? You just might need a buddy. In fact, Tiffany is a buddy to a friend of hers. This is not her friend, actually. This is my wife. I didn't know your friend's picture. So if you find yourself in the tsunami hazard zone right now, instead of building a 2 or 3 or month supply of materials, you might want to find a friend outside the tsunami hazard zone who's got a garage where you can put your stuff, so that as you escape that tsunami, you don't also lose all the materials that you've been gathering. So let's start putting together a kit based on the loss of utilities and services. First, you're going to lose water, so I want you to have at least 14 gallons of water per person in your home. That's meant to be 1 gallon of water per person for every day from the event of the earthquake until Oregon Emergency Management and the military is able to start distributing aid. And that's a lot of water, and what I'd have you do is get some actual emergency water containers. My wife and I have gone with aquatainers. They have 7 gallons apiece, 2 per person. That's enough for our family. We've got a family of 5, we've got 10 aquatainers, good to go. But they're really, really heavy when they're full. If you want a lighter option, these are called water bricks. 1.5 gallons per container, and they stack up like Legos, so you can put them into a closet, put them under your bed. If you want to go a cheap option, this is actually this is a pop bottle. Pop bottles have a very high grade of plastic, much higher than the gallon of water that you might buy at Walmart. This is a good emergency water container as well. But before you even put water in that container, you have to prepare it properly, which involves first getting some dish soap, washing it thoroughly, and then you're going to rinse out all that soap so you don't have any of it left, and then you need to disinfect the container, which involves taking about a 1/4 teaspoon of bleach, 4 cups of water, and then you agitate it 1 more time. And it's exhausting, so if you've got kids, you should really make them do it. You're going to disinfect those in the sun, and as they dry out, you take an antimicrobial wipe and you wipe out the cap. Now finally, I put the water in the container, I cap it, and I put it in a cool, dark place. Why do I do all this? So that no germs, no bacteria grow in my water container. And then a year later, I take all that good water and I water my corn. Because you need to do this at least every 6 months to a year. Make good use of the water during the summer and refill, do the whole process over again every single summer. But before you drink any water from those water containers, if you can safely get back into your home, you might consider draining your water heater, because that could be enough for a family of 5, but I would anticipate that every pipe going into your home is broken, and worse than that, you might have this liquefaction, swirly mess taking place outside, which is contaminating that water. So before you drain any water from your water heater or open up a faucet, go to the main water inlet and shut it off so you isolate the good, clean water that's right there. Food. Same with water, you're looking for 2 weeks of food at least, which comes out to 42 meals per person. And this is clearly where things get a lot more expensive. So I want to give you just some basic guidance. For one, don't try and do it in a weekend. My wife and I did this over 3 years, 1 meal at a time, every time we went to the grocery store. Buy something that you're willing to eat. If you don't like wax beans now, I promise you'll hate them that much more after an earthquake. So get something you actually want to eat, something that's shelf stable, something that will sit on your shelf for 10, 20, 30 years. Mountain House is a good option for that. Also something that's light and portable, because you just might be going to another place with your entire food supply. But just like water, if you can safely go back into your home, before you eat any of those rations, take a look at the food that might be sitting in your newly remodeled kitchen. So here are the foods that I'm looking for in this kitchen. This is Anchorage, by the way, after their November earthquake. I'm looking for the fruits and vegetables, eat them before they turn, eat the breads before they mold, eat the leftovers before they spoil, and keep an eye on all those frozen meats. As those meats thaw, you're gonna barbecue. Nobody thinks going into December that they're gonna barbecue a lot this January. You just might barbecue a lot this January. So take a look at your charcoal, take a look at your propane, make sure that it's full so that it can be usable. If you're a camper, you probably have a Coleman camping stove. That now belongs with your preparedness supplies as well. Doggies and kitties need food and water as well. You know how much food your dog and cat need. As far as water, if you want to keep it simple, 1 gallon per animal per day is perfectly acceptable, just like humans. Other things you get at the grocery store. You still need to brush your teeth. You still want people in your life to wear deodorant. You still need tampons. You still need toilet paper. Anything that you run out of on a 2 or 3 weekly basis, make sure you got those things in your kit as well. Next, the gas is out and you just might be outside on your lawn for a while. So again, if you're a camper, all that camping stuff is going to come in really, really useful. The name of the game is stay warm, stay dry. As far as staying dry, get a tarp, get a rope, or a second layer of protection over that tent to make sure it doesn't get wet. Also, that tarp can be good for water catchment as well. As far as staying warm, simple tricks. Emergency blanket doesn't look like much. It holds on to 95% of your body heat. And it goes a lot further if it's coupled up with a thick blanket, poncho, and a pair of hot hands, provided that you know where to put hot hands on your body. Anyone know? It's a misnomer, because they really belong in your armpit. Look at all that blood intake that goes right through your armpit. If you can put a hot hand right there, you're going to warm up newly warmed blood, drop into your heart, and send it throughout your body. So here's a little reminder for you. Just take in this little piece of new marketing. You'll remember forever where to put hot hands. Next, medical attention. Remember, the firefighters and the EMTs are not going to be able to easily or quickly get to you. So have first aid kits and also a lot of alcohol, a lot of peroxide. No matter how small the cut on your body, disinfect it thoroughly to prevent infections. And here are a couple of preventative measures. N95 dust masks and goggles. Why do you need those? Because some buildings are not going to fare well during an earthquake. Just as we can see in 2017 Mexico, when a building fails, it releases a lot of particulate into the air that can make the air difficult or even toxic to breathe. If you wear glasses, the next time Minions has a 2-for-1, take the second pair and put them into a kit. And if you take an important medication, go talk to your doctor who is not thinking about the Cascadia Subduction Zone, nor the fact that the pharmacy is not going to open tomorrow, next week, maybe even next month. How to talk about stockpiling. In some cases, a doctor will actually prescribe you a larger dose per month with the understanding you're going to stockpile the rest. In a lot of cases, they just tell you to refill on day 25 rather than day 30. In any case, have that talk with your doctor, and the next time you empty out an important prescription, take off the label, put it into a kit, so that if you find yourself in a shelter and we're flying in doctors from Aurora, Colorado, you can show them exactly what you need in what dose, and we can fill it from the outside. Your phone is not going to be able to do much during an earthquake. We don't even want you to try to make actual phone calls because we want to keep those cell towers alive for emergency response. So for communication immediately after, start with texting. It tends to be reliable after an earthquake. Once your phone dies, then you're going to rely on just a good old-fashioned radio to receive information from the outside. You're going to tune in to either a NOAA weather station or NPR, both of which are designated by the federal government as responsible for disseminating emergency information after an earthquake. And if they tell you to go to place X, Y, or Z for safety, then you're going to realize at that moment how reliant you are on GPS. So, thinking about how to actually get around, especially if you're traveling to parts of the state that you don't live, make sure you have good old-fashioned, actual, physical maps with you at all times. The other thing you've got on your phone are actual phone numbers of people whose numbers you have not memorized. Get some contact cards, start writing down physically, good old-fashioned physical cards of the numbers that you need to know, and get them into your wallets and purses, and designate one person outside the Cascadia Subduction Zone to be a central point of contact. My family has a central point of contact in Frederick, Maryland, 3,000 miles away. Holta has 30 names of my family in the Cascadia Subduction Zone, and those same 30 people all have Holta's number, and the understanding that we text her as one of the first go-tos so that she can keep track of all of us at once. Electricity, again, we're assuming big-time blackout, and light is not just about seeing, it's about psychological comfort and safety. All of us are afraid of the dark. So when you think about those lighting sources, imagine how many batteries you're going to go through and how expensive those batteries are going to be to replace, if it's even possible to replace them. So see if you can find crank-powered and solar-powered versions of every lighting source that you need. And keep in mind also that anything that you plugged in this morning can't be plugged in after a big earthquake because you just lost electricity. So again, put on your camping brain, or actually get out your camping stuff, put it with your preparedness stuff, because any appliance has an off-the-grid equivalent that is perfectly usable in a camping scenario or a post-earthquake scenario. Also, just have a lot of tools. I don't know how to use all these tools, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have time to figure it out after an earthquake. Never throw away a tool. Put it into your kit if you don't know what to do with it now. And one of the tools you definitely need to have is a gas shutoff. It can just simply be a crescent wrench if you want. Put it next to your gas meter. There are not vandals out there who are spontaneously turning on gas, I promise you. We've got our gas shut off right there. After an earthquake, if we smell gas, if we hear gas, if we see the meter going like crazy, we are going to take that gas tool and turn that valve until it's across. That means it is turned off. Next, your debit card's not working and you stopped carrying cash in 1993. Carry some cash. Ones, fives, tens, 20s, not hundreds. No one's going to give you change. You're not trying to pay the rent or the mortgage in cash. No one's collecting for a while. What you're doing is trying to buy the simple things you run out of, like water, like toilet paper. And the laws of supply and demand are going to work against you, just as we can see Hurricane Harvey. So do have some cash. It's going to be the way that we get the things that we run out of. And also think about those other life and financial documents that are important to you. Life certificates, insurance certificates, mortgage certificates. Try to get the PDF versions of these and load them into a cloud database so that no matter what happens to your computer, you've got them in a safe place. Your car's not going anywhere after an earthquake, but your bike works just fine. If you happen to be a bike commuter or bike a lot, or even if you ride share with someone or take a bus around, here are some things that I would have in your purse or your satchel every place that you go. Have a bit of water, medication, emergency blanket, poncho, life straw, portable filtration device, little first aid kit, and a little bit of food with you. I don't know if cargo bikes are big here, but cargo bikes, they're actually trying to figure out in Portland how to put cargo bikes to use as a relief delivery mechanism. After a big earthquake, we do races with them and the whole thing. My wife and I have one, but the way that we usually put it to use is I like to put the boys to sleep when they get restless. Just kind of push them right down. It's super uncomfortable for them, it's hysterical for us, and that's totally worth it. One more thing. The toilets aren't going to flush. Christchurch, New Zealand, a city about the size of Portland, Oregon, did not have flushing toilets for 1 year.
Whoa.
They had no flushing toilets for 1 year after their last major earthquake. Man, Astoria, I want you to do better than this, okay? We're gonna reach higher. What you're gonna do is you're gonna build an earthquake toilet system, which consists of 2 5-gallon buckets. One for number 1, one for number 2. Are you with me? You with me? Key to earthquake toilets, you just gotta keep number 1 and number 2 separate. Keep them separate because mixing pee and poop is what makes it smell. It also raises the risk of contagion, cholera even, so we've got to keep those separate. Before you make a number 2 in the number 2 bucket, because you're super curious now, you better get a garbage bag. You're going to line the inside of the number 2 bucket, and after you make that number 2, you're going to take a source of carbon, could be dried leaves, wood shavings, even paper. You sprinkle it on top. That's going to aid the composting process, diminish the smell. You can do this whole thing almost for free. Go to your local sushi house. Go to a Japanese restaurant. They've got more 5-gallon soy sauce containers than they know what to do with. They will give you as many as you want. Go to a carpenter. They've got all kinds of wood shavings to sprinkle on top. You're going to probably need to go to Amazon, type in earthquake toilet lid. They're round, they're for those 5-gallon containers. I encourage you to do it. Do it with your kids. Photo document the whole thing because it's going to help you get ready for the holiday season. This is a great way to spread the word. Where do you put all this? If you're, like I said, if you need a buddy, find a buddy outside the tsunami hazard zone to put your stuff. If you're already outside the tsunami hazard zone, 1, you need to get everything in one place. 2, you need to make sure that you can access that place. Make sure it's not behind a steel door with a steel frame. 3, make sure you're not going to have things fall on it. They're going to destroy your supply. A lot of people like to put it in the basement. I say no, because if your house shifts just a little bit off the foundation, you're not going to be able to reach your stuff. Also, I don't want you going up and down those stairs after they've shook for 5 minutes. Other people like to put it in the attic. No, same reason. Don't go up and down those stairs after they've been compromised for 5 minutes of shaking. No matter where you put them, it's got to be someplace on the main floor of your house, everything together. And again, if you camp, all your camping stuff belongs with your preparedness stuff. It's all cross-purposable. And remember, you might not be at home. You might be in your car, you might be at work, so have some level of supply in all the places that you might find yourself. Any questions? Is there anything I missed in the preparedness side? Anything else that needs to be brought up?
Garden sheds are a nice place to put stuff too.
That's where we put ours. Yes, we actually built a shed for that purpose. Yep, it's a good point.
We do a lot of hiking out in the woods and on the beach and stuff like that. I was really good on the forest and we kind of tree hug
So there is some concern about branches breaking. So you kind of have to keep your head on the swivel. So I keep looking up. Try and find the clearest place that you can. I would be a bit worried about some trees. In some cases, they do topple, especially if you're in a liquefaction zone. It doesn't happen often. I'm worried about the branches. So just keep your head on a swivel looking for branches that might fall.
How about on the beach? Is the beach gonna liquefy?
Patrick, what do you say?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's usually what I say too. I usually say, I don't know. I wish Patrick Corcoran is here.
It might, it could. There are some places where,
Here, Pat.
yeah.
So, here.
Around here, there's like just enough time to get to where you have to get to after the earthquake and before the tsunami. If you know where that is before the earthquake starts shaking. There are a few spots that you probably couldn't get to where you need to. They're pretty isolated. We kind of maybe know where those are, but I guess that's what I would say about that. There might be an imperfect place, and you might be standing there. But for most of the places around here, there's enough time to get to where you need to if you know where that is.
I'm thinking like suddenly when you go to your teaching voice, sand, wet sand.
So are you worried about a quicksand-like phenomenon, Pat?
I have not seen that in the research or in other kind of places, and that's all I would say about that. And we see those bubbles and stuff on that. They're very isolated. There's people standing right next to them with a camera. So I wouldn't expect vast liquefaction in the dunes. The dunes have actually been there for 3-4 of these Cascadia events. And so the dry dune sand is pretty good. At the top of the dune. Yep, at the top of the dune.
Yes.
So, about 15 years ago.
Hi there.
Yeah, sure.
About 15 years ago, I lived in Seaside, out of the Tsunami Zone, and I was part of a group that we were to get together, organize, and eventually walk out toward Portland. And I have a map of the forest behind where I live. So, is that realistic?
I don't know that I would want to. Okay, for one,
expectation was after 2 weeks. You know,
So I would rather. Okay. I would prepare to stay at home or in your community. I would not be walking to Portland. Everyone in Portland is thinking about walking out themselves. And guess what? I don't think anyone is going to be able to do this Lord of the Rings journey across Oregon at a time that just went through a massive 9-point earthquake that took out the infrastructure. I don't think any of us are really prepared to do that. I think you're going to be much more likely to safely shelter in place in your community. I'd prepare to stay. And if you do need to leave, I'd wait for a proper evacuation through the military. Yes. Here, we're gonna use this. This works. Check.
Okay, we took a training with the Sheriff's Department here, and they said not to assume that there are roads uphill, so to assume that we might have to bushwhack to get uphill.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Here, right.
Yeah, here in Glasgow County, we have miles of high water dikes that could flood the areas before the tsunami even got here, just from the earthquake itself.
Good point.
Anything else? Yes.
I can speak loud.
Yeah, you are.
So, just because there's this sort of, when I talk about it here in Astoria, and I hear other people express the same thing, that after the earthquake, we see what's left standing that hasn't slid down the hills. And we've recently, there's been a LADAR of Astoria, and we've discovered that we have, our slide zones are way more extensive than we had imagined. And in fact, these slide zones that are now being shown, that have shown up, they are there because they were caused by the last event, is what I understand. So we need to be aware that you're right, bushwhacking just to get up the hill, we may not have the same, to get to higher ground may be more difficult than just going up the road nice and easy like you were talking about. That could have all just slid down.
Tiffany or Patrick, do you have anything to add to that comment?
No, I think everything has been great, and I think there's been a focus on the worst case scenario, which is a 9. But let's also remind ourselves that an 8 is equally as likely for our next event. In between you and me, I don't care about minimums, maximums, or average. I care about what that next sucker's going to be, right? And so the odds of the next one being equal in size to the biggest one in the last 10,000 years is not super likely. So while it's good to talk about the extreme case, it's equally likely that next time it will be literally an order of magnitude less bad than we're imagining. So I think I'd like to encourage us to understand that it's more likely than we think, but what we're thinking in our brain right now is probably worse than what the next one's going to be, if you understand what I'm saying. So to try to bring some oxygen to the room, that it's worth doing some preparedness and some avoidance and stuff like that.
And I'd add to that, the next one might not be an earthquake at all. The next one might be a windstorm. The next one might be a power outage. The next one might be a winter storm. The next one might be any other number of things. And 2 more questions, and then we'll finish up.
This is not a question, this is a statement. My name is Sylvia Stevens. I'm with the Warrenton Hammond CERT. If you want training in how to help yourself, your family, and your neighbors, get a hold of Tiffany, and she'll tell you where the nearest CERT is.
Excellent, thank you. My wife's on CERT as well. And last question, and I'm going to wrap it up. Oh, you got one, thank you.
Is this on?
Yeah, it was on.
I can just use my teacher voice if you want. Oh, hi, Don. I'm Kathleen Sullivan, Classic County Commissioner, and I just spent this past week in Eugene at the Association of Oregon Counties. And first of all, I'd like to thank Tiffany for this presentation, and I'd like to thank you. This has been a terrific presentation. One of the events that I went to, the workshops that I went to, was talking about energy preparedness and thinking about the community and how do we get prepared for an energy shutoff. There are a lot of folks there from the eastern part and the southern part of the state who are concerned about wildfires, which is not one of our concerns, and the rolling blackouts that are starting in California and that are starting also now in Oregon. But I think that in the future, I would like us to start thinking about, and I'm sure Tiffany's already working on this, is how do we as a community and as a county start looking at how do we prepare for this very same thing? Maybe it's not going to be a 9-point earthquake. How do we have areas that we can ensure there will be electricity there? How can we protect our water supply? How do we keep our hospital going? And so those are some of the things that I hope as we go along as a community that we can start talking about that. And the commissioner from Hood River had this fabulous program that I would like to bring him here to talk maybe at a Fort George or at an event like this, where they can talk about systematic ways they look at this and how to prepare for it. Because I think it's probably a good idea. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to wrap up. Take a big breath. I'll be done in 4 minutes. Okay? Closing remarks. The last thing that we need to talk about is the first thing that you're actually going to do is your next preparedness step. It's the piece we skip. This is the tough part. I want to talk about the family preparedness plan. The family preparedness plan is free. The reason we don't do it is because it's emotional, it's vulnerable, it's uncomfortable. It's what you're trying to figure out with family reunification is this seemingly impossible equation. What are we going to do if you, me, the kids, our aging parents, our neighbors, our church community all find themselves scattered in a dozen places at a time when the bridges are down and the phones are out? How are we going to find our way back to our loved ones? You can see why we avoid this conversation, right? This is where it starts to hurt. This is where you start to actually imagine what the impact of major disaster would be. And there's not a one-size-fits-all to this equation, but I'm going to give you the very basics. For one, you need to know who is responsible for whom in your family. I know I'm responsible for the boys. I know my wife is responsible for our daughter. I know we're going to go our separate ways, maybe even without a phone call, to retrieve our kids and try to get home. That's the very gist of Plan A. I also know that my home is 100 years old and does not have a great foundation, which is, so if I get home and I can't find my kids or my wife, or my home doesn't look safe, I've got to have a backup plan. Plan B for me is a local park. I also know that that local park just might have a gas main under it. And if there's a gas explosion under that park, suddenly that's not a safe place either. So we have a Plan C as well, which is another park near some friend's house. What is the piece of this that could apply to everybody? Having 3 different reunification spots, having an understanding of who is responsible for whom, and talking about it every 6 months. The first time you talk about it, you're basically opting in to have a fight that you'd rather not. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th time, it gets a lot easier every single time. Also, know where your tsunami reunification spot is. People will organically go there, but you need to know where that reunification spot is. That was Christchurch, New Zealand, after their 2011 earthquake. Whatever those 3 spots are, again, just like those contact cards, those physically written phone numbers, everyone in your home, everyone in your nuclear family, in your community needs to know what those 3 places are and have them written down so that we remember them, how we're going to find each other. And once you do that with your nuclear family, you've got to reach out and involve other people. Why? That bridge right there. When a bridge goes down, when the overpass goes down, when suddenly I can't get to my kids in 24, 48, 72 hours, depending on where I might be, then I need help. Where are you going to find that help? You're going to find it with your neighbors. Your neighbors might be able to turn off your gas. Your neighbors might be able to feed your pets. You're going to find that with your school. Go talk to the teacher at your kid's school. How long are they going to be able to hold on for your kid? 12 hours? 24 hours? Under what conditions can maybe your neighbor come get your kids if you're not able to get there in a timely manner? My wife actually co-chairs an organization called Parents for Preparedness that tries to tackle these very questions throughout Oregon. P for P, Parents for Preparedness. I'd encourage you to look it up. Also, if you're in a workplace, involve other coworkers in this conversation. You just might have coworkers in your neighborhood. You might have coworkers that have kids at the very same school that your kids are going to. The people, when you start involving other people in this conversation, you also need to show these people the things you're doing to get ready for disasters. Please show people that you're building up a water supply. Show people the things that you have put into your kit. Show people your kit. If you've got a kit, get it at work, put it in the most visible place that you can possibly find. Don't hide it. People actually need to see it. Do earthquake drills with your kids at home. Film it. Show it. Drop! Cover! Hold on! There's a reason for all this publicity. And it comes back to the very beginning of the presentation. How do we transmit culture? We transmit culture, 1, through conversation with people that we know, like, and trust. We transmit culture through the things that we show each other. We need to talk about preparedness. We need to actually show preparedness. If you want to know what preparedness culture really looks like, I'm going to show you where it is. We're going to go one more time to the Indian Ocean, to a little tiny spot that you've maybe never heard of, North Sentinel Island. You know why you've never heard of it? Because you're not allowed to go there. No one is. There, on this tiny island, there are between 40 and 400 islanders. We don't know their language. We don't know their religion. You're not allowed to go, and if you try, they are going to shoot you with spears. Here's what we do know about them. December 26th, 2004, largest tsunami of the last 100 years, would have arrived there in exactly 30 minutes after that earthquake. The same tsunami that Lydia and I experienced in that year. You know how many of them died? 0. Everyone figured this tribe was extinct. And yet, when they went to check on them, they flew over with helicopters. The tribe threw spears at the helicopters as a way to say, we're just fine, leave us alone. Why is that significant? That guy had never seen a tsunami before in his life. I guarantee it. It had been at least 100 years since anyone on this island had seen a tsunami, which meant their parents had never seen one. Their grandparents had never seen one. Their great-great-grandparents probably had never seen one. How did they pass on the knowledge of what to do? Through each other. When you hear and see something important from someone that you know, like, and trust, that's when you adopt culture. So I hope you leave this room, get prepared to the hills, and show other people how to follow your example, because that's where culture changes.